Hello everyone and welcome to our another lecture series for our course entitled Training and Development. I hope everything is doing well and okay to you and your family right now, especially during these uncertain and very challenging times. Last time we talked about uh, the things that we need to do first in this course, and that was about code of ethics in the context of industrial and organizational psychology. So we were able to know what are the principles that will help us to be grounded in everything that we'll be doing soon in the field of IO psychology. And then the next week, we talk about an introduction about the training and development proper. So you had an idea right now, the importance of training and development in businesses, in organizations, and companies. And you were also given what is the structure of training and development as a whole. And last time as well, we talked about a thing that would really make a successful training development, and that is how to make a strategic training and development. And that will be our topic for this session or for this lecture. It's doing an effective and, of course, a strategic training and development. All right. So we have welcome to our um, lecture series again. And so this is strategic training episode. Um, And before we start with the lecture proper, we need to discover or we need to emphasize the things that you'll be learning at the end of this lecture, right? So we are able to distinguish and enumerate learning objectives. The first learning objective is that by the end of this lecture series, you learners will be able to discuss how business strategy influences the type and amount of training in a company. And business strategy here will be discussed furthermore on the following slide. So business strategy is what is the goal and how an organization is really inclined to be in the future, like what are their views and what are their goals in getting this specific strategies. Next learning objective is to describe the strategic training and development process. So you'll be able now to identify the different steps in conducting a training and development. And as you go along each step, you will have realizations that perhaps a specific step is more important and there are other steps that might not be necessary, but it really depends on the organization or company that you're planning to conduct and implement your own training and development. Next is how does a you be next learning objective is how would you discuss how a company staffing and human resource planning strategies influence training. So how does recruitment, selection planning of employees really affect the course and development of training to the company. So you'll be able to understand that as we go along again in the next slides. Next is explain the training needs created by concentration, internal growth, external growth, and disinvestment business strategies. Next learning objective is to discuss the disadvantages and advantages of centralizing training function. So there are instances where in training will become centralized within an organization. Again, it depends on the needs and the potential of the organization. Next is you'll be able to discuss the strengths of the business embedded model of organizing the function of training function. And lastly, you'll be having an idea what is a corporate university, right? So a quick introduction. So I think on the learning objective, we are able to discuss about business strategy. So what is business strategy? Business strategy is would try to integrate the company's goals, policies, and actions. So it's like the it is the backbone of the company. It is the framework of the company. It is how the company, it is the company's blueprint in terms of long-term goals. So if you known someone who is an architect, so the blueprint there is their guide. It's their guide on constructing and designing structures of a building. So in a similar manner, business strategy here is the company's blueprint. It tries to integrate the goal of the company, its policies, SOPs, protocols, and of course their actions. So in this context, we'll be using the company coffee shop. What will be the good name of a coffee shop? Now this, for example, a very famous Starbucks, right? Starbucks is a coffee shop. So what is the goal of Starbucks? What are its policies and what are its actions? So these three characteristics makes up the business strategy of Starbucks, right? Another important factor of business strategy is business strategy tries to influence how the company uses its physical, financial, and human capital. So it's not just about the goals, the policies and actions, but it's also on the physical, like the structure, the buildings, what else? Um, the financial aspect, how they manage their money, how they manage their finances. Do they invest it? Do they do corporate, for example, stock market? And how do they recruit their employees? Do they um, do external or outsourcing recruitment, or do they recruit within their company? It depends. So that's also part of the business strategy of um, call this. For example, in our example, Starbucks, right? So, of course, goals is, if we define it in the dictionary, it's what the company hopes to achieve in the medium and long-term goals. So strategy here determines the amount of training required for the current or future skills, extent to which training should be customized for particular needs, extent to which training is restricted to specific groups of employees or open to all, extent to which training is planned and systematically administered, importance placed on training compared to other HR practices. So if you notice here on the PowerPoint slide, it would tell us that uh, business strategy is not just about the policies, but it's really the framework, it's really the backbone, it's the blueprint of an organization. So in our example, the blueprint of Starbucks, if you notice here, amount of training required for the future job skills, that is referring to the call that. That's called staffing. Extent to which training should be customized for particular needs. That's how we analyze job, right? Training, of course, in the third example, and of course training, and of course other aspect of training as well. So it influences not only the policies but also the actions of the organization. In here, we have another aspect here. Learning as a strategic focus. Um, if you noticed, there are other terms used right now in training and development. Most organizations right now are not using anymore the traditional or conventional way. They are now using learning and development. So instead of using training development, they are using learning and development, right? So learning organization here, we can say that an organization has this called learning if They have the enhanced capacity to learn, adopt, and change. They can carefully scrutinize the learn, adopt, and change. Training is a part of system designed to create human capital. So in this context, we can say that an organization has the capacity to do learning to its employees if they have the characteristics, if they have the potential, if they have the resources. So for example, in Starbucks, do they have the enough resources? Perhaps yes, in terms of training their employees doing customer service. They have these trainers who are well equipped with the skills and attributes that are they wanted to give to their employees, right? And of course, for example, this Starbucks have the characteristic to know and to evaluate if their goals right now is in match with the goals of their employees or expectations from their employees. So do they have that characteristic? Perhaps yes. So they can perhaps do an auditor, an external auditor to check if the company, I mean the employees were really adhering to the policies of the company, because there will be tendencies that there will be internal biases if the one who will be evaluating is coming from the organization. So in this context, they will be using an external auditor. So they'll be using perhaps strangers or paid surveyors just to do an evaluation of the services that Starbucks has been given to their customers. Okay. So there are several, call this supportive learning environment that we can say that um, th- that would benefit the organization. So the following are the key features of a learning organization. So we can say that this characteristic would help us achieve a learning fit organization. So we have several factors that would help make um, an organization a learning fit organization. So we have here, of course, a learning environment should have, I mean, a learning organization should have a supportive learning environment, meaning that the environment is equipped, meaning it is suitable to be conducted with learning, right? Next, learning and learning processes and practices. So with this one, the organization itself has its own existing or not drafted practices, protocols, and systems on how they do learning. So for example, in Starbucks per se, we can say that they can do training before their baristas start working on first day, right? So they will be doing a first day orientation training for their newly hired baristas. So they will be conducting um, it depends on the program. I'm not sure what their programs were, but they will be customer service 101 and how to perhaps the different beverages being served. There will be a refresher training on that. Right? Of course, managers also reinforce learning. So these are the people who are responsible in handling several people within organization. So basically, they are the team managers or they handle a specific team. And they also contribute big to the success of a learning organization, right? So when we talk about learning as well, we need to focus on the capital, human capital. So I've mentioned earlier on the slides that business strategies also includes human capital, right? So when we focus on the human capital itself, like the people in the organization, be able to recognize that learning should happen the following ways with them. So, of course, well, employees can improve their performance if we do learning and development because they will be acquired with the new knowledge. And information coming from a specific subject matter, right? And of course, in return, achieve business goals. And of course, business goals is really to have a bigger profit or higher return of investment. And I think that is mostly one of the most common business goals of most businesses nowadays. Right. And of course, learning should occur on a needed basis. So it needs analysis. It will not be possible. It is possible to do training without a basis on it, but will it be practical? Perhaps no, because if you conduct training without any basis, then it will be a waste. So, for example, if you're going to conduct training for a customer service for the newly hires, right? But before you hire them, you already gave them an assessment that would measure their customer service skills. And most of them have high scores, and you've done simulation. So is customer service still needed? It depends as well. But technically, no, because we found evidences that the newly hired had some skills with dealing with customers. So why do we need to conduct training for them with customer service, right? All right. So learning should be supported psychologically, of course. It's not just about the physical aspect, but also the emotional and psychological aspect of the employees, right? So we have here implications for human capital development. So there's a lot, key capabilities. We'll be able to know as well what are the key capabilities of the organization and of course of the employees. So we have here aligning learning goals with the business goals, measuring business impact, movement of learning outside the company, developing competencies for critical jobs, integrating learning and other human resources, including classroom as well as e-learning, designing and delivering leadership development courses. So basically, if we're able to conduct um, um, focus on the human capital development, so these are the things that might be possible on the employees, or I mean on the people that you'll be giving training, and of course to the organization as well. All right, so this is now figure 2.1. This is the most awaited slide that we've been waiting for. So this is the strategic training and development process. So how do we do it? How do we do it? How do we make a strategic training and development? Uh, so this is it. This is the answer to the question. So of course, we need to do business strategy. After that, we'll be doing strategic training and development initiatives. Next is training and development activities. And lastly, we have metrics that show the value of training. If you would notice, business strategy there is left intentionally blank. Why? Because you need to create your own business strategy out from the mission, vision, goals, and objectives of the organization that you have chosen. And how do you usually manage, or how does the organization usually manage its physical, its financial, and human capital? Right? That's the content of the earlier slide. So I think I'll be discussing the requirements for your prelim. So this will be part of your requirements, right? If anything is already done with the identifying your business strategy, you will now proceed with the initiatives. These initiatives would let you create a strategic training. So you need to put in action, or you need to think of it of activities that would create change or that would initiate the training development in your organization. So we have here an example. So you can diversify the learning portfolio. So what will be the portfolio? Is it going to be electronic training or is it going to be the traditional training? So perhaps you can improve the customer service on the organization. So for example, in our example, Starbucks, yeah. That would be good, basing on the evaluation as well. You can accelerate the pace of employee learning, so it you can as well identify if you among your employees are they slow learners, are they fast learners, or through these initiatives you can really know how are the learners pay, how do they usually learn. And of course, capture and share knowledge to the whole organization. So after with your initiative, you can proceed now with the activity. So how can you make this initiative in action? So that is the content of training and development activities. So you need to make an actions to your initiative. So for here, diversify the learning portfolio, then perhaps you can use a web-based training or electronic web-based training, right? And lastly is the metrics. So how can we measure our, how can we know that there is a value of training, right? So what are the effects perhaps of these activities to the employees and to the organization or to the stakeholders, right? So for example, for learning, so portfolio, so there will be increase of learning, knowledge, performance improvement, reduce customer complaints, reduce turnover, employee engagement. So if you would notice, every rows are aligned, right? So here in the initiative, we have diversity in the portfolio. In order for it to make possible, you need to use an electronic or web-based training. And what will be the effect of that? There is learning, there is wisdom, there is a transfer of learning. So if you notice, it is aligned. Okay. So this is now the process of really creating the process of creating strategic training development process. So you start first with the business strategies, and of course, the content for that will be the mission, vision, and the values, right? So uh, if we talk about Starbucks, what do you think is their mission? To become to provide the best coffee in the world, or to provide the best coffee in America. I'm not, all of these are not true. I'm not representing Starbucks. Perhaps this is just my assumptions, right? Vision. How do they view themselves 20 to 30 years from now? And what are their values? What are their company values? Do they value camaraderie? Do they value their customer? Do they value family? No. And one way of knowing that is to know or to do a SWOT analysis. SWOT analysis stands for strength, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So it is composed of two parts. We have the internal and the external analysis. Internal analysis is referring to the strength and weaknesses of the organization, and the external is referring to the opportunities and threats. So it's a pros and cons, advantage and disadvantage. So I'll be giving you a format on doing your own SWOT analysis on your chosen or pseudo organization, right? So we have here external analysis. It's really discussing the things that would influence the company from the outside perspective. So like the environment, threat to the environment, competition, marketing, etc. The internal analysis here is referring to the internal aspect of the organization, for example, financial aspect. How are the people being treated? How do they relate to each other? How do they do training? How do they staff their employees, right? So those are the questions that perhaps you can look into when doing internal analysis, right? So we have also strategic choice here. It is a strategy believed to be the best alternative of to achieve the company's goals. So this is really another way of looking on the SWOT analysis here. This is strategic choice. So if the organization perhaps doesn't know what is, if they are uncertain of what are their goals, perhaps, then they can look on the strategic choice. And of course, this strategic choice is also drafted and created. So figure 2.2 here shows the process of formulating a business strategy. So we have here a diagram that will tell us that it starts with, of course, with the mission, right? On the left part, this is the left part of the slide. So you can see here there the mission, right? So on the mission, you have there why does the company exist? Though that is the guiding question for the mission, right? Next is we go to the goals, right? What is the objective of the company, right? And next is we have here the internal and external analysis. And we have now the SWOT analysis, right? What are the opportunities and threats? What are the strengths and weaknesses? And we go back to the strategic choice. So how will we compete? How does the company compete? How will Starbucks compete? Right? That figure will be your guide, right? So table 2.2 here would tell us the possible business goals influenced by training, right? So business goals here. So go back to the figure here, goals. So these are the example of business goals influenced by training. Again, business goals aligned to training, not training aligned to business goals, right? So this business goals is really drafted to align with the needs of the training of an organization, of course. So these are the following. So productivity here, we have reduced scrap and rework, increased customer satisfaction, reduced operational risks and accidents due to employee carelessness, increased employee satisfaction and retention, increased time and value producing goods, such as the increase in available project time hours, we have better management decisions, increased development of human capital, and succession planning needed for competitive advantage and growth. So these are an example of business goals. So in order for you to create, um, these are the things that you need to consider as well when making and how are you going to create your strategic choice, right? So strategic choice here is referring to how will your company or organization compete with other existing or with similar line of business. So question number one is how will your company compete, right? In what markets, right? For Starbucks, they are on the coffee and the beverage. So how will they compete with Dunkin' Donuts? How will they compete with coffee, bean, tea, and leaf, right? And since you have mentioned or identified the competitors, how are they going to compete, right? Are they going to perhaps do marketing? Like, are they going to make unique products, right? That will be unique only to Starbucks? Are they going to use rewards and incentives like coupons to their business, right? And third is with what will we compete or with service will compete? So what resources will allow us to beat the competition? How are you going to acquire those things? Like for example, the coupon, the rewards and incentives. How are you going to make that possible? So that is the third question, right? So we have here the strategic training development process. After doing the business goals, let's go now to the initiatives, right? So learning and related action that help achieve the business strategy, right? So it's if you notice, it's really connected. So if this is your business goals, the strategic training development should match or should help make the business goals possible, right? So the strategic training and development initiative will help the business goals possible. And we have a lot of strategic training and development initiatives in their portfolio. So this is an example that was given from the figure here. So if you notice on the PowerPoint is very small, but this PowerPoint is already available on your modules in Canva, so you can view it later on. So if you notice here on the left side of the monitor, on the slides, you have there the initiatives, right? On the right side, right, of the PowerPoint, where it has a longer, more detailed initiative. So those are the more detailed and more, call this, more tangible initiatives. So for example, strategic training and development initiatives. So we have here diversify the learning portfolio. So how can we do that? We'll be using technology, facilitate informal learning. All right. So those are the things that would examples of how we do initiatives and training initiatives. So table 2.5 are questions to ask again on how we're going to create our strategic training and development initiative. So we really love to ask questions, right? So I hope that you are still okay right now. If you're going to measure your energy level from 1 to 10, 1 is the lowest and 10 is the highest. How would you like to measure your energy level? Is it 1 or 5 or 10? I hope that you can still bear with the lecture. This will be quite technical and will be quite long. So I also decided to just pre-record this because it will give us a lot of convenience for those who cannot attend our synchronous online classes. Right? So going back to the question or to the PowerPoint or to the discussion proper, so this table 2.5 would help us design our, um, develop our initiatives to have a strategic training development. So there's a lot of questions, 7 questions to be more specific. So what's the mission, the vision? So identify the strategic drivers or the business strategy. It's really on the um, how an organization can do to how can an organization or business makes its business strategy possible. So these are the questions that will help you um, make those initiatives. All right. So we are done now with the initiatives and in activities. So we will now proceed on the evaluation. How are we going to measure the efficacy or the importance of training to the business or to the organization? So we have your metrics, and metrics here is the business level outcomes chosen to measure the overall value of training or learning. So it is not an evaluation form. It is an evaluation form, but not similar to you when you give after a seminar or training. This is not. This is a business level, so it's like a more on a holistic approach in looking on a training. And one way of looking that is by using balanced scorecard. So balanced scorecard is it from a words of it's a balanced scorecard. So it balances the different aspects of an organization. So if you notice here, it will not only measure the training, but also the profit, the customer service, the satisfaction, the return of investment of the organization. So it will try to measure the performance of departments or functions. And these are the considers of 4 perspectives of the balance scorecards. We can look at the customer aspect, the internal innovation, the learning, and the financial aspect. And we have here again the organizational characteristics that influence training. So these aspects here are the things that really have an impact on the whole training culture in an organization. And of course, the role of employees and managers. And of course, we start with the people in the organization because without the people, there is no organization or business, right? So here we can really say that the employees and the managers or the leaders, the middle leaders, plays a very vital role on the organization. So can you just imagine a team members without a team leader? How are they going to work without a leader, right? So we have here like a to-do list or a requirement for a manager what he or should be doing to lead a team. So yeah, it's you can just scan through with that. And of course, we have also when you're working in an organization, it's not that it's static. Most of the organization have its own structures or mostly hierarchy. And of course, we have here the rank and file, the middle managers, the executives, and of course the CEO or the board of trustees, right? So we have here the top management support, and we know that CEO is a very crucial role in the company. They are the face of the company, right? If you notice, like from top manufacturing companies, I mean top tech companies like Apple, Samsung, and Huawei, I mean, their CEO is really the face of the company, right? For example, when Steve Jobs died, like everyone in the US was really mourning and they were very sad because Steve Jobs was the CEO at the time of Apple, and he's really the face of Apple at the time. Right? Aside from the managers or the people from the organization, uh, we have also here the integration of business units, right? Um, and of course, we know that a business has its own different departments or structures. So, for example, if a very complete example here is what we call the rotation training. So, if an employee will be assigned first, for example, if he is a part of the HR team, so first, the HR will be assigned, the personnel will be assigned first on training, right? That's for 2 months. Next 2 months, will be assigned to recruitment and selection, right? After 2 months, she will be assigned to compensation and benefits, right? And another 2 months, and he will be assigned to, call this employee engagement. So there is a holistic process in training and developing the personnel because the personnel was able to really see the whole process and whole picture of HR by rotating from different functions, right? Another um, organizational characteristic that's really influences training is really the global presence. Like it really depends on how big or what really is the objectives of the organization. So when we talk about globalization, we talk about lesser boundaries of people around the world. So I'm thinking of airline companies, for example. So for example, in the Philippines, we have Philippine Airlines, we have Cebu Pacific, we have Air Asia, right? So how do they train their employees there? For example, the faces of their companies are the flight cabin or the flight attendants, right? So how do they send or how do they train their flight attendants or flight cabins? Perhaps they will do training outside the country. Mhm. To perhaps they can do cultural training, like they will be simulating training, like simulating cultures around the world. So they will be sent to other countries to really study the culture of the people there, because that will be also a big possibility that that will be their customers as well. Right. Aside from global presence, we have business conditions, right? What is the impact the ability to find employees with necessary skills and retain current employees. So what is the culture or what is the atmosphere of the employees in the organization? Are they millennials? Are they baby boomers? Are they a mixed are they is there a diverse population among the um, on the organization. I mean, part of the LGBTQ, persons with disabilities, right? Do they have several religions, perhaps? And of course, other human resource practices. And these are referring to the HRM practices. So in USBF, for those who belong to the old curriculum, you'll be having a separate course, like a 3-unit course for this. So you'll be spending a semester studying human resource management. So these are the different tasks of human resource management. This is really the industrial aspect of IO psychology. So you will do investments, staffing, how you recruit people, how you manage the performance, how you evaluate the performance of the employees, how you do training, right, like what we're doing right now, and how do you compute the compensation, and how do you give benefits to your employees. Of course, we have another here is a staffing strategy. How do we look for talents? How do we recruit people? Are we going to look from the outside of the organization or within the organization? So both internal and external call this recruitment have its own advantages and disadvantages, similar with other aspects of human resource. So what do you think are the advantages and disadvantages of doing internal and external recruitment? Please let me know your answer in the comment section below. I'll be reading your comments and hopefully I can answer them, right? Hope to hear from you soon. So figure 2.4 here is the implications of staffing strategies for training, right? So how would staffing influence training and development? That's the question there. So on the table here, will know that there is 4 quadrants here. We have the fortress, the baseball team, the club, and the academy, right? So if you notice here, there's also arrows, both from the y-axis, I mean the vertical one, and the horizontal one is the x-axis, right? So here, what is our goal here, right? So if you notice, if if our staffing is a baseball team, meaning it's leaning towards in terms of supply flow of people, it leans more on the external labor market. So it goes back outside the organization. And in terms of assignment flow here is referring to how do we put, how do we give contribution? How do we give task to people? So if it's a baseball team, it's on the individual contribution. So we give emphasis on the individual. So that's the meaning of the baseball team. So if you notice here, um, use of job experiences. So we were talking about here of more seasoned and more experienced employees. Um, and the key strategic characteristics here, innovation, creativity. So we can do biomedical research on medicines. Yeah, firms and consulting firms. So again, so on the support flow, so that is the how do we export? How do we get people? Is it on the internal labor market, like within the organization, or is it outside the organization? Like, do we do external recruitment? Like, we go to job fairs, we post it on online platforms such as LinkedIn, JobStreet, etc. On the y-axis here, I mean, on the x-axis here on the horizontal line, you have there the group, district contribution, and the individual contribution. So where should our task matter? Is it on the individual, like just the individual entity, or do we value collaboration and teamwork? Right. So in the example there, we have the baseball team. So the baseball team emphasizes individual contribution and external labor market. So we wanted to know, we wanted to recruit creative and individualistic people, and we can find out outside the organization. How about the fortress? The fortress here is similar to the baseball team because they wanted to recruit outside from the organization, but they wanted to emphasize teamwork and collaboration, which is not on the baseball team, right? Club here, from the word it's a club, they belong to the same organization, so they emphasize internal labor market. So they recruit within the organization, and of course, since it's club, they of course value group collaboration. Right. And lastly, we have the academy. The academy here is quite similar as well with the club, but on the other hand, it emphasizes the individual contribution instead of the group contribution. So it emphasizes individualism compared to collaboration and teamwork. Right? I hope that figure 2.4 makes sense, but because it would really give us an idea on how should we do training, right? So you as trainers in the future, you will be evaluating what are the different staffing strategies does the company used or been using for the quite long or for the past years, because we will align this to our training. So we have here another, of course, another strategies or another characteristic, organizational characteristic that influence training. And we have here the uniqueness, the strategic value of job and employee uniqueness. Like it views on the individuality and uniqueness of the person, because we are not training robots. We are not training programs, but we are training people. And of course, as psychology students, you know that people are human, are very unique individuals. Even a lot of studies will tell us that even identical twins have their own differences, right? And of course, another characteristic is how we plan our human resource. That is the identification, analysis, forecasting, and planning of changes to help meet the changing business conditions. So this is, it's like strategic planning on the human resource aspect. So what we're doing right now is strategic training. So the equivalent for this for human resource is the human resource planning. Another characteristics here is the unionization of a company. So union, if you notice, is uh, uh, it's like a voice, like a group of people that wanted to somewhat convey the sentiments of the whole employees to the upper management. If you go to school, it's like the supreme student government in a university or a college. And we have, by the way, here another characteristic is the staff involvement in training development. So it's really the efficacy and the skills of the trainers doing the training, right? It would be very ineffective to hire trainers who are not qualified to train specific topics or characteristics, right? And this is here, table 2.7, very technical and very big table. So this is now the implications of business strategy for training, right? So our strategy here are already enumerated from the previous slide. So we have here concentration, internal growth, and this investment. So we have here emphasis section. How can we achieve it? The key issues and the training implications. So the strategy have been already emphasized or been identified. And the emphasis region here is the parts that we wanted to look deeper. Like what do we wanted to emphasize? What do we wanted to focus, right? And how can this emphasis be achieved? So that is the focus of the next section, and that is how it is achieved, right? Next is the key issues. What are the challenges, perhaps, and what will be the effect to this to the organization? That's the next section. So on the strategy here, we wanted to be concentrated. We wanted to give or to have a market share bigger than the competitors. For example, for Starbucks, we wanted to out to outcast, or do we want to become the top coffee shop, for example, in the world, right? So how do we emphasize, or how do we focus on that? So of course we need to focus the market. We need to get the market to 100% market share of coffee in the world. How can we achieve that? A lot. Customer service, improve the services, improve the quality of the coffee, improve, give incentives, right? And what will be the implications for that? Of course, on the job training, we have team building of the people, and of course, return of higher investments, ROI, etc. And right now, we have also the different trainees and different strategies. I think this was given on the table 2.7. So this is here is the would we would on the next slides we'll try to make things clear, a bit clearer on figure 2.7. So here, internal growth strategy focuses on new market and product development, innovation, and joint ventures. External growth here strategy is referring to the emphasizing of acquiring vendors and suppliers or business to expand new markets. So we have also external growth strategy here. So this part is emphasizing on the vendor, acquiring vendors, suppliers, or buying businesses to expand into new markets. So it really is on the operational side of the business, on the external aspect of the business, while on the internal it focuses on the marketing, how do we strategize, product development, how do we make our products more profitable against the competitor. So questions like that. And we have also the disinvestment strategy. So it emphasizes liquidation and divestiture of businesses. So it emphasizes on the perhaps the processes of acquiring the for example the machines or the technology from the organization or for the organization. Right. And these are the follow. So right now, we'll be talking about the models of organizing the training department. So one way of model that have been used, no, is what we call the centralized training. So this training is um, the resources itself. The developers, I mean the trainers, are in a one location. So they are trained in a one department because of course it's centralized training. So everything should be one in one place, right? Next is we have also training investment and delivery methods. So training delivery methods, decisions are made from one department. So and lastly, the advantages. Um, it helps to integrate the programs for developing leaders in management talent. So, a very complete example here is from a BPO company. So, when I was working from a BPO company, um, their HR is separated, their training is separated, and their recruitment is separated. And the name of the recruitment, by the way, is not recruitment, it's called talent acquisition. So, each of the parts is um, a separate department. So it's not part of HR. HR is mostly on the admin or the human resource management, except for recruitment, right? Because it's a very big company, so they need to have a specific department. So for training, they have a training manager. So They have specific trainers, so they have their own specific offices, they have their specific training rooms, they have their own specific resources. Same with the talent acquisition. They have their own recruitment room, recruitment hub. They have their own resources as well, computers, etc. Same with HR as well. And the advantages of here is that um, it would really help integrate other information from different departments because if they belong to different departments, so we have different ideas coming from different departments, right? Helping aligning the goals of the organization rather than coming from a single department, right? So this is another model that I've mentioned on the last learning objective, and this is the corporate university model. So this is quite different from the centralized training. Well, I mean, it's part, by the way, of called the centralized training. It's the corporate university model. So we have here the historical training problems, and we have on the other side is the training advantages, right? And on the inside the box, we have there the leadership development programs. So um, and the lower part is new employee programs. So upon analysis, you're able to create uh, um, you were able to go back to the past and identify what were the problems before by the organization. So, for example, here we have excessive cost, poor delivery and focus, inconsistent use of common training practices, best training practices not shared, training not integrated or coordinated. Right? And if you're going to put on the box, we have here different columns, right? So they are the pillars of the development programs of the organization. So we have here the product development because, for example, our example is Starbucks. So how do we develop products? How do we innovate them? Right? Next is how do we operate? So how do we acquire the coffee beans that we've been using? Do we have suppliers? Do we grind our own? Do we roast our own coffee beans, or do we export, or do we outsource it from other organizations or businesses? How do we market? How do we sell our products? How do we market it so that it will stand out from the competition? And what are the people involved in delivering all these goals? Like who are the baristas? Who are the one who makes the coffee? Who are the team leaders of the baristas, right? So all of this is going to the of training advantages. So for example, we have redissemination of best practices, align training needs with business needs, alignment of the needs of the training and the business needs. And of course, in the lower part, we have here the new employee programs for our newly hired people or individuals in the organization. So this is table 2.9. This is another model. So we have here the corporate university model, and here is a B model. So B model has its own um, features. So we have here strategic direction, product design, structural versatility, product delivery, accountability for results. Right. So what is a B model, by the way? Right? A B model is with centralized training. So with B model, it allows the company to gain the benefits of centralized training, right? Again, B model is a form of centralized training. So B model ensures that training content and delivery methods that are business specific. So it focuses on the goals of the organization. It focuses on the strategies in acquiring those goals. Right? Right. Aside from the B model, we have another model for training, strategic training, and this is a change model. So we have two shapes here, distinct shapes. So we have here the rectangle, and this is a hexagon, right? Yeah, yeah, hexagon. Six sides. One, two, three, four, five. Hexagon. So the rectangle here is the components of the organization, and the hexagon are the change related problems, right? So what is the component of organization? We have the task, the individual or the employee, the formal organization arrangement, and the informal organization. So the formal organization, we had the hierarchy, the CEO, the rank and file, the team managers. Informal organization are referring to clubs, unions, right? So if you go to in the individual, what is the possible change problems? If you're going to put change or challenges, or if you're going to put the person into a different role, right? So there's change from the role. So what do you think will be the effect? Resistant to change. Of course, when people are in their comfort zone, there's a tendency that people are not that comfortable when they move to another aspect or another role. So this is the problem here, resistant to change. So change model is really focusing on the change and the implications of the change to the people or to the context. Next, we have the task. What if we change the task? Right? So for example, the task is you're a manager, and then I will demote you into a barista because you are not performing well as a manager, right? So that manager has been working as a manager for almost a year now, and then you demote him as a barista. So there will be possibility that he will be kind of still bossy because he was a manager for almost a year, and he will try to be bossy to his fellow barista because perhaps the person would say, I'm the manager here before, so you should follow me, etc., etc. So it could be a possibility. So there will be a task redefinition challenges. So the the former manager doesn't know his role already. There is a job confusion. Right? Informal organization here are referring to clubs or unions. So what will happen if you're going to change it? Like for example, in the union, there will be changes. So instead of a democratic type of union, it will be more on a autocratic type of union. So the leaders of the union will be chosen by the party or a dominant group. So they will be kind of if the goal of the union is to really have a well representation of the people, and I think a form a democratic union is perhaps the best way. But if it going to be an autocratic, then there will be some power imbalances between the people, the whole people of the union, and the group of people handling the union. Right. And of course, we have the formal organizational arrangement. So we have the CEO, the team manager. Can you just imagine if you're just going to jumble everything? What will happen? Like if the CEO will co- um, abdicate from the position. So what will happen? There will be chaos in the organization if there will be no CEO or leader in the organization, right? So of course these are the things that have been discussed earlier. So no need for me to read it again. I've already discussed and shared some examples on the previous slides. So what do you think? Since we have discussed several models already on training and creating a strategic training, we have here um, the B mod, the corporate model, we have the B model, and we have also the change model. So what do you think is the best model in creating a strategic training? Please let me know your answers by the comment section below. I'll be very glad to hear your comments, and I'm very excited to answer your questions as well. Okay. So we have here, um, how do we do change? How do we acquire change if you're going to use change model in strategic training? So these are the steps that you need to go. If you're going to process steps in change process, if you're going to really acquire, if you're going to utilize that step. So number one is request for change, make the vision clear, coming from the business strategy before. So the mission, vision, goals, and objectives should be it should be very clear, period. Design a solution. If there is an established conflict or problem, what is the solution? Communicate. Choose and announce the action as soon as possible. It should be smart, right? Execute and create short-term wins and follow up, reevaluate, and modify. If you've established that there is changes, you need to reevaluate and realign your process. And right now we're talking about marketing. How marketing the training and how do we share to the organization? How do we share to the world that your training is one of the best practices in the organization? And how do we create a specific brand for your training? Because this is also marketing, right? We wanted profit. We wanted our services to be profitable, to be consumed by the consumers, right? So we have here internal marketing, and this marketing is referring to the managers and referring to the word of mouth of people within the organization. There's a lot of tactics or strategies in doing internal marketing, and that's really word of mouth, doing for example, the champion who actively supports training, listening, and act on feedback received. So it's really talking within the organization, members of the organization. Of course, we have also um, email or the use of technology. You can also assign a person who will be the responsible, who will be the one who will be interacting between training, designer, and the business unit. Of course, financial gap as well, the finances. And of course, do not use jargon. Please use the words of your consumers, of the people that who you wanted to work with. And this is the steps on how to create your own training brand. Table 2.11, right? So these are the guide. If you wanted to create a brand in your training, follow these questions. And of course, not all of us have the resources, have the time, and have the manpower to do training. So some of the organizations will just outsource training. They will hire external people who will do the training for them. Right? So of course, outsourcing, like the context of BPO business process outsourcing. So big companies such as tech companies, for example, we have in US, we have Verizon, we have AT&T, so since they have a very big demand of customer service, so they outsource this to other countries. Like here in the Philippines, we have a lot of business process outsourcing companies who've been doing like that. What are the advantages of outsourcing training? Of course, cost saving. It will really give you in the long run, it will give you lesser expenses because with external training, it's like an all-in-one package. It will just give them money, the quotation of the whole project, and it's done. No need for you to hire to let your HRs to do overtime, to give them another task, to demand for another responsibility because everything is given. And same with that, you can save a lot of time instead of devoting and crafting the program and thinking and realigning of the business goals from the training goals. No need for you to do that because the outsourced training organization will be doing that for you. Yeah. Of course, they've been doing that in the long run, so they really know what is the best training practices. And of course, there are also reasons why they don't outsource training, and that is the inability of the outsourcing providers to meet the company's needs. So meaning the outsourced trainers did not meet the demands of the organization. And of course, the desire to control over the aspects of training development. There are companies, still organizations, who wanted that, we wanted to be hands-on with our training, and we wanted to know, to really explore our people, and we wanted to know their growth. So we wanted to do our own training. So yeah, that's their philosophy, that's their values. And again, these are the guide questions if you're planning to outsource your training outside your organization. So we have you 10 questions. All right, that's the end of our presentation. So technically, we have covered a lot. I hope that everything went through your mind. So, but if you still have questions, or if you are in doubt, if you still able to recall the lecture, you can really just do a playback of the video. I will be uploading this in YouTube, so you can just really, and of course I'll be uploading this in Canva, so you can just really replay it, right? If you have questions or clarifications, please let me know. Please send an email. Please message me in Messenger. Please send a message in Canvas. I'll be very willing and very happy to answer your questions and clarifications. Right? So again, this is employee training development, strategic training. I hope that you were able to grasp something from our lecture, even if it's very technical. I know this is new for everyone, but I hope that you were able to appreciate the importance of creating strategic training in making our training effective, in making our training relevant, and of course, to contribute to the growing needs of, I mean, to the growing community of IO psychology here in the Philippines. Right? So I think that'll be all for now. I'll be waiting for your questions in the chat box. Thank you so much for your time and have a great day ahead. Goodbye for now.